Get asked this one all the time. The reasons why I would not invest in NDIS. So NDIS is disability housing. But let's talk about the pros first, because this is important. So the biggest pro that they advertise and talk about is the high rental yields, because the government is actually guaranteeing the high rental yields, which is typically $1,700 per week. So it has this like high cash flow. But note, this is only for the first 10 years though. And they advertise and say that that goes up with inflation, right? But if you've heard me talk about inflation, you would know that it's not real inflation. Like inflation they talk about right now is 7%, but really, real inflation is more like 17%. Woo! So they put it up with inflation, but like the fake number, the lower one, that's not really real. But good news is there's actually a lender who will guarantee the loan for an NDIS property. So if you're stuck with someone from a serviceability perspective, the bank is willing to give you the loan for it because it's backed by the government, giving you the money to keep that deal afloat, basically. The number one con that I do not like about NDIS is you need a shitload of capital. So you need a lot more money to start off with, which the average Australian just doesn't have. So say, for example, the property would normally cost $500,000, but you have to cough up an extra $200,000 just to make that a proper NDIS house to qualify for it. So you have to cough up that money, that cash yourself. What this also means is pulling out equity is a lot more harder because banks don't recognize them for their true value of that extra money you had to put into the property anyway. Because the bank's gonna look at it on the outside as just like the normal house, even though you had to put up like an extra $200,000 as an example to make it that NDIS house. So because you'll get stuck from a capital and equity perspective to move forward to build out a property portfolio, you will get stuck from a capital, and that's the reason why I suggest it's not a good place to put your money from a capital perspective. And then after 10 years, then what happens after the government guarantees you that money? Well, guess what? I've got a client who's literally stuck in that position at the moment. She bought an NDIS property 10 years ago. It's also not a really good long-term sustainable strategy either. That's because you can no longer, you can only rent out to that particular cohort of Australians as well. And so it means it's also much difficult to find tenants as well. And the lending for this also goes into the commercial industry. Again, so instead as an investor, instead of coming up with a 10% deposit, you actually more likely need 30% deposits. And because it's treated like commercial, it also means the interest rates are higher again. So to wrap it up, whatever it is that you're looking for in NDIS property, you can actually find that in residential as well. You can get high cash flowing properties just like that in residential, believe it or not. So you can have the best of both worlds. You can have high cash flow, you can have it all though.